Hey everybody, welcome back to MUFC vs. Everybody. I am your host Sean, and I'm so glad you guys are back. Wanted to stop by today, not with any sort of transfer news, not with any sort of major breaking announcements or any sort of official here we goes or anything from Fabrizio Romano, but I did want to come by today and get your thoughts on a couple players we've been linked with, not just because of the players themselves, but because of the position at United squad and one of the players who already plays in that position. So if you haven't guessed by now, yes, today we're taking a deep dive, closer look at both Dani Olmo and Xavi Simons. Number 10s, creative midfielders, wide players, attacking midfielders, whatever you want to call them. We're going to be taking a closer look at both players, a little bit about their careers, their numbers, what they could offer, their profile, etc., etc. What does this mean for our current players? And all of that we're going to dive into today. So apologies for a little late video today. A lot going on this morning. Big up, happy birthday to Cheeks. I'll call him Cheeks. My buddy's kid had his birthday party today, so I wanted to stop by this morning and show my support, show my love, and drop off a present to that. So happy birthday, Cheeks. And it's important you guys make time for that as well. But in any case, before we do get stuck in, please don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the video, especially if you like these kind of deep dive scouting reports, whether it's managers, players, whatever. If you guys like that and want to see some more, get involved, let me know. But let's dive in. My boy Justin getting involved. Appreciate you, brother. Yeah, man. Thanks for having me out to the party today. Had a blast and good to see Cheeks. Get all his toys, get all his presents, and get all the love from everybody. So big up Cheeks. Big up Detroit City FC. They're playing tonight. They are in the USL. Wanted to show my support with the jersey. They kick off. I think they kicked off a couple seconds ago. So big up Detroit City. Viva Le Rouge, right? So let's get stuck in. Got some loud whispers making the rounds later on this week about Manchester United's number 10 position. Like I said, we saw talks earlier. If you guys haven't yet and gone and watched that video on my Bruno Fernandes video, would you sell him to the Saudi League if a £100 million offer came in? Go check out that video if you haven't yet. Offer a lot of arguments for both sides of that stance. So go check that out. But we saw some rumors popping back up that Bruno is getting more interest now that the Saudi League is getting a little bit more funding. They're opening up their foreign player allotment. We've already saw him getting interest back in November from the Saudi League, and that's when that £100 million price tag was getting thrown around. So add to that, now we're getting rumors linking United with interest in Dani Olmo and Xavi Simons. Olmo, he's been killing it with Spain at the Euros. He plays obviously for RB Leipzig. And then Simons, who is been doing very well in the Netherlands. Obviously, the Netherlands lost to England in a narrow 2-1 loss. But Simons has actually been really good in his last couple seasons. He's still a young player. If United are legitimately interested in Dani Olmo and Xavi Simons, who both play in the same position on the pitch, right? And there's also rumors that maybe we're open to listening. We've given Bruno Fernandes our blessing to go listen to offers from Saudi clubs. There is a possibility that we could see United's number 10 look a lot different next season. Remember, we did sign Mason Mount last summer. Amad Diallo could also play there as well. He played there for Sunderland quite a bit. So number 10 position and wide positions are anyone's guess right now. Saw the news yesterday, Jadon Sancho might be sticking around. He and Ten Hag apparently had a talk behind closed doors. Everything is fine. Doesn't mean he's necessarily staying. It just means he's not going anywhere right now. When it comes to Olmo and Simons, I mean, we can't sign both, meaning we have to decide which one better suits United's system if we are interested, if that position on the squad frees up, if we need a new number 10. Dani Olmo versus Xavi Simons. It's a tough call to make, but today I want to take a closer look at both players. I want to look at their statistics, their profiles, what they offer, and let you guys maybe decide what you're feeling, one or the other. So let's get stuck in. We'll start with Dani Olmo. He's 26, Spanish, plays for RB Leipzig, like I said, came through Barcelona's academy and then joined Dynamo Zagreb as a teenager. He was like 16, 17 when he joined Dynamo Zagreb. Obviously, they play in the Croatian league. Spent a few years with their second team, their reserves, before making his first team debut in 2015. He did help Dynamo Zagreb win several league titles. I think it was like consecutive league titles. But Olmo actually racked up quite a few individual awards during his time with Dynamo as well. He was actually named Croatian League's Player of the Year in 2018. He was voted to the Team of the Season in 2019, and he was also named the league's top player in 2019. So obviously 2018, 2019 was peak Olmo for Croatia. After a few impressive years of first-team football in that league, Olmo made the step up, signed a contract with RB Leipzig in the 2020 January transfer window, so he joined in mid-season. So now if you're familiar with the Red Bull system, with how that works, there's a pipeline coming through Salzburg to Leipzig, and so on and so forth. There's a steady flow of young talent coming through. And almost in that, what this means for Dani Olmo, since he joined Leipzig, is that regular first-team minutes, regular spot in the starting 11 wasn't exactly easy to come by. Leipzig and Salzburg are very well known for having an excellent scouting system, excellent recruitment, excellent kind of, again, that pipeline coming through. They haven't nailed it on the coaches since Nagelsmann has been gone, Salzburg as well, but you've seen, especially when Ralf Rangnick was in charge and we saw guys like Sadio Mane and so on coming through, like they were on point. But again, what this means for Olmo is that has not been the first name on the team sheet since joining the Bundesliga. In fact, the most starts that Olmo has had in a season since joining Leipzig was in the 2020-2021 season, and then he only got 26 league match starts. So hasn't exactly been like first name in the starting 11, like I said. His numbers in a Leipzig shirt have been decent. They've not been great, not stellar. We're not looking at like Bruno Fernandes numbers or anything like that. But they're not horrible. They're just not like great. Probably not especially as good as some of the hype would suggest. Last season, 4 goals, 5 assists in the league. Not great, like I said. Not even double-digit goal involvements. He only had 2 goals, 5 assists the year before that, 3 and 3 the year before that, and 5 and 9 in 2021. Again, not superb, not excellent, and definitely not proportionate to the amount of hype we're seeing Dani Olmo get. I think a lot of people right now are hyping up the Euro performances, and to his credit, he's been great for Spain. He's looked really, really good. I'll admit, I watch a lot of Bundesliga. He looks much better for Spain this summer than he has for Leipzig anytime I've watched him play. I think it's no coincidence that we're now seeing the stories and the rumors and the links pop up as well, riding that hype train. That's what happens. You don't want to fall into that trap of looking at international tournaments for scouting. What do I always ask? What is the question I ask when it comes to that? Can anyone tell me where James Rodriguez is right now? No. No, you can't. You don't want to fall into that trap. And again, Olmo has never even had double-digit big chances created in the Bundesliga either, which is kind of a good metric. Like Bruno is consistently like top of the league for big chances created. We'll talk a little bit about Xavi Simons' numbers in that regard as well, but it doesn't scream to me a player who is a leader on the pitch. It doesn't scream to me a player who's taken the game by the scruff of the neck, kind of, pulling his team through it. It doesn't scream to me a player who's in control of a match, not someone that you look to make a difference. I'm not calling him a passenger. I'm not calling him anything like that. There's just not that level that we need. He's not at that echelon, I think, what we need. For the release clause quoted, which again is in that 52 million euro range, which is kind of what we paid for Bruno, if you remember, and the fact that we'd have to be replacing Bruno, you'd really want somewhere close to Bruno's numbers, which Olmo just hasn't produced. Olmo is a bit versatile, though, which is a bonus. It's generally a number 10, but he can play as an 8, and he can play wide as well if needed. I think he is better as a number 10, though, when he's given a little bit more freedom to kind of move around, pick up the ball, make things happen. We've seen that with Spain. Kind of like what you see with Bruno, what you see with Odegaard, what you saw from like João Felix when he was on loan at Chelsea, kind of can do whatever they want a little bit. He gets most of his touches in the final third, kind of in the opposition half, just outside the box. And what you see from Olmo is that he can read a pass. He can pick a pass. He's got a good passing range. He's really good at finding runners in and around the box, finding that. We've seen that with Spain. He can kind of thread the needle and pick out Morata and whoever else is playing up top a little bit, which, again, we see that from Bruno. You don't see it as much from Xavi Simons. We'll dive into that a little bit as well. And so I do like Olmo's passing range. I do think he has good vision and he's got a good pass. I haven't seen enough of it. I haven't seen him produce it enough. He's really good at finding teammates. And so I like that in that advanced position. Oh, who we got here? Vibes is back. What's up, Vibes? It's good to see you again, my brother. I get to go on live on my computer. Good deal, man. Olmo also is very good in a high press. Presses high at the pitch. He's got decent tackle numbers, decent interceptions, winning the ball back. I've seen it a little bit at Spain. He's not afraid to get stuck in and win the ball back if needed. So that could be a good fit for Ten Hag's system. We know Ten Hag likes his team to press high at the pitch. We've seen that. I would argue that we haven't seen it because a lot of our players just aren't capable of it. But we've seen that that's what Ten Hag wants. You looked at Mason Mount's tackling numbers and his pressing numbers when he was at Chelsea. They're actually pretty decent. And I think that's what we're going for, players who are not afraid to get stuck in. But let's see how Olmo compares to other players in his position over the last few years. Okay, I'm going to take a look at some of his percentile ranks here. And so starting with last year, his assists almost in the 80th percentile. His expected assists are in the 90 percentile. And what you're going to see a lot last year, like I say, in tackles, his tackles compared to other midfielders, basically advanced midfielders, he's actually got over 1.5 tackles. So he's got 1.66 tackles per 90 and almost 0.75 interceptions per 90, which is actually in the 76th and the 86th percentile, respectively. So what that means is in the top 25% for tackles for players in his position, and he was in the top 15% for interceptions for players in his position, and he was in the 78th percentile for clearances. And so what that tells me is that he's not afraid to get stuck in. He's not afraid to put in a shift off the ball to help his team win the ball back. And as far as clearances and aerials go, he's good at kind of knowing where he needs to be, to kind of prevent the opposition from happening. Just caught the stream, pal, says Danny B. What's up, guys? Thanks for stopping by. Like I said, we're just diving in, looking at Xavi Simons, Dani Olmo, kind of either or, taking a deep dive look. How do they compare? How do they stack up against other midfielders? How would they fit in against United? I'll let you guys decide who you think we should be going for. So that was last season for Dani Olmo. Very similar this couple seasons before that. What we've seen, though, is what you'll notice the drop-off from last season is that he has not been carrying the ball as much and not passing the ball as much. And again, he's not a regular in that starting 11. So in the 2022, 2023, and then 21, 22, he was actually in like the top 10% for successful take-ons and progressive passes as well. He was in really top numbers. And so he was moving the ball a lot more ahead of last season, whether that's by carrying it himself or picking out a teammate higher up the pitch. Those numbers have dropped off. Anybody who is a Leipzig fan, you can let me know why you think that is. But again, this first season in the Bundesliga, it was similar. Top 3% for progressive passes. He was trusted a lot more. Now, could that have to do with all the changes we've seen at Leipzig over the couple of years with coaches? Nagelsmann left. They brought in Tedesco, I think. And who's there now? Is it Marco Reus? Who's there now? I can't remember. Plus, you've got other midfielders. I mean, you brought in Xavi Simons last season and Xavi Simons, to his credit, played a little wider, but they've got Baumgartner, who I really like. Before that, they had, so when Olmo joined, they still had guys like Sabitzer and Konrad Leimer as well. So a lot of competition in that midfield. Kevin Campbell was still doing things there. A lot of midfielders at RB Leipzig, and it's hard to break into that first team. But at the same time, I look to the hype again, and I look to his age. Again, Dani Olmo is 26. For the hype, for the price, for the age, I feel like we should be seeing more than, not even getting double-digit goal involvements in every year. It's not great. So That's how he stacks up to other midfielders in his position. Let me take a look at what you ultimately get with. So what you get with Dani Olmo is a technical player. Yes, he looks good on the ball. He looks silky. He kind of reminds me a little bit of like a João Felix. He's get the ball and he looks calm. You know, he looks like he knows what he's doing. He's able to contribute to a high press as well. But the output, the actual end product, has just not been there on paper anyway. Again, not great goals, not great assists, not great big chances created. He offers a bit more in that he pitches in off the ball, like I said, with tackles and a high press. But is that enough to not only maintain what we potentially could lose with someone like Bruno, but also, you know, improve? We saw a couple reports again that United were among several clubs who are interested in Olmo. Again, he's got that £50 million release clause. I think that release clause actually expires in a week after the Euros ends. I think it was set to expire, but then it got extended. And so we've got any team who's interested has a little bit of time if they want to pay the release clause, which obviously Leipzig are going to want, you know, to demand. Wait too much longer though, and then you're going to get into a little bit of a bidding war. And Olmo actually just said recently, while on international duty, he said my 60 million clause. So he's talking about euros until July 20th. You know what you have to do, he said. If not, you'll have to fight a little later. So he's saying, if you want me, you know you have to pay the clause. If not, you're going to have a fight on your hands a little later. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I worry that he lacks a bit of that edge that you might need for the physicality of the Premier League. We've seen some players, even Amrabat, who everybody was so excited about, just kind of floundered a little bit with the physicality, just didn't quite seem up to it. You know, we've seen that from quite a few players. It takes a lot to take the kind of licks, the kind of physicality you're going to get in the Premier League and still maintain your levels. Not everybody does it, and that's just normal. I mean, I would argue Sancho isn't up to it. I would argue Antony has not been up to it. Victor Lindelof, I don't think is up to it, because it's just, you have to reach a different level. You have to be just a little tougher in this league because you're not going to get away with a lot. You're not going to get as much time on the ball, especially in recent years with the opposition players just pressing. Danny B says 100. Yeah, does that mean you agree? I mean, physicality is a big deal. You have to be able to maintain that while also maintaining your other natural abilities. And you still have to develop and learn as well. Again, Olmo can't even lock down a starting spot with Leipzig. Again, with Baumgartner. And then they brought in Xavi Simons on loan as well, both of whom play similar positions. So arguably, if Dani Olmo is an improvement on what we already have at United, and he hasn't done enough to be a regular starter at Leipzig, does that mean he would be the best option for us? Does that mean it would be wise for us to pay that? It's a hefty release clause, guys. It's 50 million pounds, 60 some odd million euros. It's a lot of money to pay for a player whose stats just aren't really great, personally. We already paid a lot for Mason Mount. Remember, we made Mason Mount a priority signing last summer when we had a lot of priorities. We gave Mason Mount the number 7 shirt, which at United is saying something, right? So what does that mean for Mason Mount? What does that mean for Bruno? What does this mean for who we already have? Don't answer yet. I know I asked the question. Don't answer yet. Because now I want to take a look at Xavi Simons and how he compares to Dani Olmo, how he compares to other players in his position. And then I want to take a look at how both compare to some of the players we have at United who play in those positions. So let's dive into Dani Olmo right here. I mean, Xavi Simons, sorry. There's been a lot of talk this morning, and this, I wanted to hold off this morning until I had a chance to really think about United and some other clubs. I know Leipzig and Bayern Munich kind of maybe being interested in bringing in Xavi Simons. Now, it sounds like PSG, again, are kind of only interested in doing a loan right now. But this is coming from Simon Mullock in the Mirror. So they want to loan him again, PSG, this time, but they want to maybe put an obligation to buy. He's been on loan the last 2 seasons. Technically, I call the PSV thing a loan because ultimately it turned out to be a loan, but we'll dive into that in a second. My question is, why not just sell him outright? We're going to dive into that a little bit too. I think Xavi Simons could be a really good pickup for us. Let's explore the numbers behind that to let you know what you can expect from the kid. All right. So he's PSG player, 21 years old, Dutch. Obviously, you guys have been watching the Euros. You've seen a little bit more of him. He actually spent 9 years at Barcelona's academy, very similar to Dani Olmo coming through that Barca academy. Joined PSG in 2019, but he has spent the several last years on loan-ish. So when he went to PSV, it was initially going to be a loan, and then PSV decided they wanted to sign him. But what PSG did, all right, you're keeping up with the PSVs and the PSGs. So when he actually ended up being sold to PSV Eindhoven, but PSG put in a buyback clause for it was like 5 or 6 million euros. So he signed for PSV ahead of 2022-2023 season, and that's when he actually worked under Ruud van Nistelrooy. If you remember, Ruud van Nistelrooy was the manager of PSV that season. If you want to know more about what Ruud got up to at PSV, go check out my deep dive on Ruud as manager, what he brings to United as our new assistant coach, style, profile, tactics, all that. Go check it out. So PSG inserted that 6 million euro buyback clause, and they ended up activating that at the end of the season, which was kind of a bummer. I don't know how much Eredivisie you guys watch. I watch quite a bit of Eredivisie. He was unstoppable at PSV, Xavi Simons. Immense. How immense? Let me tell you how immense. Started every league match, 19 goals, 8 assists, 11 big chances created, 10 times team of the week, Xavi Simons. He was joint top scorer in the league, and he was voted Dutch Footballer of the Year that season. Insane numbers, guys. And he was still so young. He's 21 now. He was only like a teenager then. That is insane. He was all over the opposition half. He's covering every blade of grass, getting involved in the final third, pressing high up the pitch to win back possession. The guy was all over the place, and I loved every bit of it. Watching him play at PSV was awesome. He ended up going back to PSG, right? They did the buyback, brought him back, which, again, PSG are either trying to see if he's going to develop or they're trying to get the most money they can out of him, because they immediately sent Simons on loan to RB Leipzig last season. And it was last season where he had a chance to show off a little bit of that versatility, because where he was playing more of a number 10 at PSV Eindhoven, he was actually playing more on the left wing at Leipzig. But he still put up some great numbers. 8 goals, 11 assists last season. He's actually second in the Bundesliga last season for assists. 14 big chances created. So maybe there's an argument to be made that he's a better winger. I don't know. You decide. He was third in the league, the Bundesliga, for successful dribbles per 90. So again, you know how much I like players who can carry the ball and not just have to rely on finding teammate with a pass. 10 times team of the week. So he went from being 10 times team of the week in the Eredivisie to 10 times team of the week in the Bundesliga, back to back. Boom. Voted to the VADEVA, so basically the Players Union, basically the PFA equivalent in the Bundesliga, to the team of the season last year as well. So, and it's VADEVA, VDV if you're English, but it's VADEVA if you're Dutch. So just a little lesson for you. But basically, bottom line is, that's a long way of saying the kid is incredible, right? What I like about Xavi Simons, too, is that he's got a ton of energy. Like I said, he covers every blade of glass. And he's smaller, right? But what, like with Messi or like the shorter players, he's got that low center of gravity. He's good at riding tackles. He's very good at kind of dropping the shoulder, getting low. That low center of gravity makes him very well balanced. That's why you see a lot with running backs in the NFL. They're shorter, the low center of gravity helps them ride those tackles, helps them stay upright, helps them stay balanced. Science, bro. That's also why women tend to be better dancers than men, is because they tend to be shorter, and therefore their center of gravity is lower, makes them more balanced. Science lesson for everybody today. Get on that. So again, he gets involved all over the pitch. Now, some might argue when it comes to Simons in that regard that maybe that means there's a lack of discipline there, lack of positional discipline, like we sometimes criticize Bruno for. I'll let you guys be the judge. Is it a lack of discipline? Is it a license to roam? We've seen that from Odegaard, and Bruno dropped back deep a lot. It could go either way. Simons has very good one-touch and link-up play, especially in close quarters. A lot of no-look passes, a lot of heel flicks, a lot of give and goes, which I really like to see. We haven't seen that a ton from United. We saw a little bit of it towards the end of last season in the final third, we kind of use it as a last-ditch effort in our own half, trying to play out from the press, and it got us into some trouble sometimes. So with the right players, it can be fine. But don't take my word for it. Let's look at percentile racks and see where Xavi Simons compares to other players. So let me just zoom in here on my screen so I can see what I'm doing. So let's start with his time at PSV. Okay, so he's actually in the top 4% for non-penalty goals. Again, joint top scorer in the league. He was in 75th percentile for assists. Again, what do you have? Like, what did I say? Like 8 assists, 11 assists for that time. Very good. 92nd percentile for shot creating actions per 90. So the top 8% for shot creating actions. So again, when you see numbers like expected assists, when you see numbers like shot creating actions, what that tells you is they're putting the balls in the right places. They're finding teammates. When those chances don't turn into goals, it's because the teammates aren't able to put them away. It is what it is. His pass completion last year was in the top 7%, 83rd percentile, so top 17% when it comes to progressive passes. So he's not only, it's not just the defender finding their partner or finding a fullback, they're progressive passes. So passes that move the ball 10 yards closer to the opposition net. So he's moving the ball forward. Top 13% for progressive carries and top 15% for successful take-ons. Again, he's able to carry the ball himself as well, and he does it very, very well, which I love. And interesting enough, in terms of aerials won, so Xavi Simons is not that tall. He actually is in the top 26% for aerial duels. So it's not just all about how tall you are when it comes to aerial duels. We see that from Lisandro Martinez, Jules Koundé, neither of whom are 6 foot tall. If you can time your jump right, if you can nudge a player a little bit, you can still win those aerial duels. So it is what it is. Last season at Leipzig, obviously the goals dropped. He went from 19 goals in the Eredivisie to what did I say, like 11 goals, 8 goals last season. But his assists went up, 85th percentile for assist, 94th percentile for shot creating actions per 90. So he actually jumped up a little bit percentile rank for shot creating actions. And his expected assists jumped up as well, 91st percentile. Very, very good. Again, passing numbers stayed relatively the same. 96 top 4% for progressive passes for 90s, and the top 15% for progressive carries and successful take-ons. So he can move the ball, he can beat a man to carry the ball. Again, it's consistent. Now he's young, so there's not as big of a wealth of a sample size to go off of like there is Olmo, who's 26. Xavi Simons is still only 21 years old. What does that tell you, though? That tells me that his ceiling may be higher than Dani Olmo in terms of just what we can expect moving forward. Where Simons differs from Dani Olmo is that, again, he's more of a dribbler than a passer. Dani Olmo is a guy who's going to thread the needle, find the pass. Simons is a guy who's going to carry the ball more often than not. Instead of receiving the ball, looking for the pass, he can take it and move it himself, which I really like. It helps overload the opposition in the final third a little bit. We get more bodies in there. And if you're able to get in some one-touch and some good link-up play, it does help confuse people. So what does this mean? We look at some players that United have in their squad already. So I'm going to look here at Bruno Fernandes, and I'm going to look at Alejandro Garnacho. I'm not going to look at Rashford's numbers because Rashford's numbers were garbage last season. Bruno's defensive output is way, way more than what you get from both Olmo and Simons. And like Bruno actually puts in a shift off the ball. He's actually in like the top 2% for clearances, so he knows where to be. He's in the top 12% for tackles, interceptions, and blocks for 90 for attacking midfielders in the top like 5 leagues. So he's doing what he needs to do. Top 2% Bruno when it comes to progressive passes per 90. So he's got more than 8 per 90, and his shot creating actions are in the top 6%, and he's attempts an average of like over 61 passes per match, which is the top 4%. He's a passing machine. Didn't perform as well as his expected assists go, but again, we just weren't able to finish our chances a whole lot last season. It is what it is. Now, on the wing, which is where we saw Simons play, and we were seeing Olmo kind of spend a little bit of time here and there, we'll look at Garnacho. Garnacho is in the top 5% for progressive carries, and he's actually in the top 2% for touches in the attacking penalty area. So he's getting forward. He's getting the ball in dangerous areas as well. Now, you don't see that as much from Simons or Olmo, but they're not wingers. But then when Simons played on the wing at Leipzig, his numbers were better than Garnacho's as well in terms of, assists and goals. So I think that right now he could also be a little better than Garnacho. Would I sell Garnacho? No. Would I find a way to make it work? Yeah. Does that mean selling Rashford, putting Garnacho on the right, putting Simons on the left? Maybe. But that's not my call. We're here to get your guys' opinion today on some of that. Let me go back to this other screen. So Garnacho also gets a lot of shots. Now, a lot of those shots are not going in, but he gets more than 3 shots per 90, which is in the top 7%. And so it might be a numbers game. Again, Garnacho's still young. I think what Garnacho needs to learn is when to shoot, when to pass. I think both he and Rashford are guilty of holding on the ball a little bit too long, and it does kill the play, it does kill the attack. But in terms of comparison, you're not going to get a straight up comparison for Bruno. It's just not going to happen. I think of the two between Olmo and Simons, Simons is probably the closest you're going to get. And then on the wing, so last year on the wing, Simons did get really good carries. Let me see. So 6. He didn't get as many progressive carries as Garnacho. So because he's not a natural winger. What we see him doing Garnacho when he gets the ball, he wants to get forward. He wants to carry it. Simons is not a natural winger. He played there with Leipzig, but it's not his natural position. But he acquitted himself well last season, playing in a position that's not his natural position. So could he do a job in a pinch? Absolutely. Is that why we would sign Simons? I doubt it. But versatility is good. We were linked with Dani Olmo, who obviously is not as good as some of the other attackers that we've seen in football, but Dani Olmo can play as a striker. He could play on the wing as well. Versatility is not bad at all. Amad Diallo can play on the wing, played a lot as a number 10 for Sunderland, and he did both very, very well. There's something to be said for versatility. Jules Koundé, who I mentioned last week, can play a center back, but he's played a lot at right back. He's played pretty much the right back for France this whole Euros, and he's done really, really well. He's very fast. He's very good in the air. He's got a good pass on him. Good recovery pace. I love Jules Koundé. So, Olmo, Simons, they both can play wide, but clearly, for our argument purposes, it's clear they're better suited to that number 10 role, right? Again, this really is going to depend on the future of Bruno Fernandes and the cost to replace him. Let's say, hypothetically, he ends up going to the Saudi League for $100 million. Again, Olmo's release clause is more than $50 million. Simons sounds like a loan initially with an option to buy. I think PSV do have like a sell-on clause still inserted when PSG bought him back. And I think that sell-on clause expires at the end of this calendar year, so the end of 2024. So we'll see what that means in terms of a deal. Live chat, what we got? Brendan Chappell, we don't need wingers, though. We already have too many. We have a lot of wingers. Are those wingers good enough to bring us forward? Is Anthony good enough? Palestri looks like he might be out the door. Ahmad, I'd like to see more of. Garnacho, Rashford, is Rashford going to stick around? Sancho looks like he might be sticking around. We have a lot on paper, and I think that we're going to see a couple of those guys leave. So what that means, we could still see Sancho go. Juventus are still interested. Dortmund is still interested. It's the wages that are being the big sticking point for a lot of that. I think that if we paid him $250 a week instead of the $350 that he's on or whatever, he'd already be gone. We saw the reports yesterday. Obviously, he and Ten Hag talked things over, Sancho. So it sounds like for right now, everything's moving forward in terms of he's training and he's available for selection. That doesn't necessarily guarantee he'll be here next season, though. It's a long transfer window. Danny B says, I prefer Simons, like you said. He has way more potential over Olmo. A loan with an option to buy would be a good deal. Yeah, I think that, a loan with an option to buy is probably the ideal. Let's see what we got here. So it's that, that sell-on that PSV have. So if we can outlast that sell-on, if we get him on a loan now with an option to buy at the end of the year, that sell-on clause that PSV have is gone. So who knows what that means? PSG would probably demand a little bit more, knowing right now that PSV are going to be taking a big chunk of it. If I had to choose right now, kind of like what Danny B is saying, I would probably choose Simons. He's got a lot better numbers. His goal involvements are a lot better. I think that because he's 5 years younger, like I said, I feel like his ceiling is going to be a little higher than Olmo. I think he suits the league a little more than Olmo. I think Olmo is just, he's not lazy. I think he's just a little casual, a little silky, I guess, on the ball. And maybe that just doesn't translate well, but I don't know. I really don't. I'll let you guys decide. Our biggest weakness, says Brandon, is that the opposition knew how to set up to stop us from playing. It didn't help that we didn't really have the players available to play. It got to with Ten Hag when he first joined 2 seasons ago, right? You don't have all the players you want for your system. It's very difficult to play that system. He managed to get a couple, and it was like a half and half between kind of counterattacking and trying to implement the high press. Second season comes around, and normally, like, okay, we'll get you a few more players. We'll see what your system looked like. It wasn't planning on the fact that we had so many injuries. And now I was very frustrated that Ten Hag still tried to play out from the back with guys like Maguire and stuff. But I think what we've seen overall in the league is that the opposition teams in general, no matter who they're playing or what, they're just not as frightened anymore. And so we see a lot of high presses, which you can't really work well against with guys like Casemiro or Harry Maguire. They just panic a little bit. Brendan says the main benefit in Simons is that Ruud van Nistelrooy is the one that brought Simons to PSV. It means that Man U will know how to utilize Simons best. Yeah, I think, like I mentioned, he played under Ruud. Ruud has a history of, at least at PSV, of working with these young players, getting them going. Gakpo, Madueke, Bakayoko. We've seen what they've become with a superb, legendary striker like Ruud van Nistelrooy. I think the way we play, the way Ten Hag wants us to play, and how we played later in last season, if you remember, a little bit more pressing, a little bit more intricate in the final third, a little bit more controlled, composed. I think that suits Simons more because he not only is he good on the ball, but he has energy off the ball. Again, nowhere near the numbers of Bruno when it comes to tackles, and honestly, nowhere near the numbers of Olmo when it comes to tackles. So I'll let you decide, if the tackles and interceptions are the most important thing for a number 10. It helps, but it's not why you buy number 10, right? It's the same why you don't buy a center back for goals. It's just not why you buy them. But I do think that Simons suits us more. I do like Simons a little bit more. I do think his numbers are better. I do think when I watched both of them play, they're better. Simons is better. Obviously, Olmo is having a better Euros, and he's looked really good in the Euros. But again, it's a handful of matches in the summer with his international team. It's not what he's been doing the last couple of years in the Bundesliga. Again, though, to be fair to Olmo, I do think he's just got a better passing range. And so, again, it's about how we want to play. He can pick the kind of passes that Simons can't, but his numbers just don't show the end product enough. So it's difficult. What are you guys thinking so far? It's a little bit of a brief deep dive, right? We looked at the numbers, looked at the ranks, look at what they bring, how they play, the profile. I think, again, cost is going to play an issue. I think that Simons being 5 years younger, and what we're starting to do a little bit at United, we're seeing this rebuild. We're targeting some younger players. We've been linked with a lot of younger players, a lot of these random Brazilian players, guys like Anselmino. I think we were linked with Pafundi, who is now at Lausanne Sport, which I think INEOS also, or Sir Jim also owns, if I remember correctly. We're trying to identify some young players for the future as well. And so who knows? I don't think we have a whole lot of number 10s in the academy coming through. And so we are kind of at a bit of a loss if or when Bruno goes. Remember, Bruno's going to be 30 this year. I'm not saying that's old, because 30 is not the same as it was 10 years ago, but he's linked with interest from Saudi leagues. We had the rumors of that £100 million price tag in November. And the Saudi league is getting a bit of a boost this summer as well. So I think Ederson is already leaving. De Bruyne has been linked. Who knows what's going to happen? We got here. Justin says Pellistri, Anthony, Martial. Martial's already gone. Martial is in Varane. They said their goodbyes late last season. They're free agents now. Martial's gone. That's why we went for Joshua Zirkzee. We need to strengthen with players like Simons. Maybe try for a few extra defenders and an additional striker. You want another striker? We got Højlund. We got Zirkzee now coming through the door. Ethan Wheatley, who got a little bit of minutes late last season. Obviously, he's not first team ready, but he's kind of he's 18, 19. He's coming through the blocks. I'd like to see us get some defenders to the door. I'd like to see what our midfield looks like. I do think we need a left back because Shaw can't be relied upon. I have no idea if Malacia is even going to be match ready when the season starts. Is he traveling this week for the preseason? I don't know. I've only seen like 2 photos of Malacia since last preseason, and one of them was like 2 days ago in the picture of the new kit. I have no idea. Have I heard any more links to Oscar Zambrano? You mentioned Oscar Zambrano. I remember we were linked with him. When we linked with him back in the winter, he plays for, isn't he Ecuadorian? He plays for, I forget the name of the team. You have to help me out. Wasn't he banned for a doping scandal, I believe, if I remember correctly? I only say that because I used to scout him in FIFA and sign him because he was actually pretty decent. But let me know, Danny, if that's who you're talking about. Justin says, thankfully, INEOS and Sir Jim will get back to being more financially sound. Hopefully, they've got a lot of repair work to do with the finances. We are massively in debt. We have FFP and PSR stuff that we've got to deal with because of how much we've overpaid for players and how much we pay the players and the fact that we haven't made any money selling players. Again, the example I'll give, Pogba sold him, let him go for free, bought him back for 89 million, let it go for free. No money there. And then Anthony, when it comes to wages, he was on 20K a week at Ajax, and then now we pay him 200K a week. You know, we pay Jadon Sancho 300K a week. There's a reason we can't sell players. Harry Maguire would be a West Ham player right now if he wasn't on so high wages. There's no need to pay players that much. And I get it, the just the complete lack of structure and the circus that we've become over the years since Sir Alex retired. It's kind of been the only way we could entice top players to come is just to pay them. But it's not long-term thinking. It's not like professional thinking. It's not wise. It's not the kind of thinking and planning and behavior that football people do, people who know what they're doing. And now that we actually have a structure, we could see something different. But the fact that the most important decisions at the club were made by people like Ed Woodward and the Glazers, and Rich Arnold, John Murtaugh, these guys, that's why we're in the state that we are in now. INEOS have to come in. And there's a big reason why INEOS have had to cut back on the lavish perks, cut back on the redundancies in the staff, because it's just gotten out of hand. We tried so much to make it look like we're a big club by doing all that stuff, but all that's done is put us in debt and made so many people just kind of redundant. And I'm trying to hear both sides of it, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I'm saying we have to cut costs, and this is some of the ways we have to do it. I don't like it when people lose their jobs, but this not necessarily INEOS's fault. It's the Glazers. Ugh, take a breath, get some water. Woo. It's like therapy when I see clients. The point is for me not to talk as much when I see clients. I got to listen more. So that's why I'm getting involved in this live chat a little bit more. Anthony still has potential, though. Oh, my goodness. We can't talk. I gave Anthony, after his first season, I liked Anthony at Ajax. If you guys have been watching the channel, you know I'm a big Ajax guy. I watch a lot of Eredivisie. I wanted Ten Hag as manager for years. I was glad when we signed him. Anthony looked a world beater at Ajax, but it was big fish in small pond syndrome. I give everybody a year to adjust to the league. I gave Anthony last season to try to, and he just hasn't shown me. We've seen glimpses of Anthony. What I like about Anthony is energy. He fights, but he's just he's just not cut out for the league, I think. And it's unfortunate that we pay him so much. And he's not a bad player. It's just not everybody's fit for the league. I love Donny van de Beek. I don't think he's cut out for the league. It is what it is. Victor Lindelof, it's nothing personal, not cut out for the league. I don't think Anthony, he has potential. We know too that Omar Barada, when he was at City, had like this 2-year thing with players. Like, you got to show me something in 2 years or else we're going to be looking to move you on. And I think that Anthony is going to be moved on. The hard part is the wages. We'll see if that's this summer, if that's next summer. I think the best thing for Anthony would be a loan with like an obligation or something to buy option somewhere, maybe in France, maybe like in Italy or something. Who knows? But I think that might be the best option. Who knows? He could go to like Flamenco or something and do just fine as well. Maybe like River Plate. I don't know. Yeah, Ecuadorian, we linked last January. Never heard of that. Yeah, he was banned for alleged doping thing. So they removed him from FC 24 because of it. He's not playing. I think he's done for a little while. It's hard to find a whole lot of news. I had to do a little bit of a deep dive, and I had to Google translate a lot of the results because they were all in like Portuguese or whatever. But yeah, he was banned for a while. You got to do a little bit of a deep dive on some of these things. Like there's that striker that was linked with some moves. He plays in MLS. His name is Cucho Hernandez. Drawing a lot of interest, producing some numbers, linked with a lot of clubs. But what people don't realize is that Cucho was actually banned for making a homophobic slur during a match. So it's one of those things, is that the kind of player you want at your club? Do a little deep dive to look at character. Fergie always said, he looks at a player's character as well as their talent. Brendan says, let's be fair, every player that Man United has purchased in previous years have failed to meet expectations. I think that, it depends on the expectations. Are we being realistic, or are we saying, we're Man United, you need to be this? And I was just talking to a friend of mine earlier, Justin, who's in the chat right now. If there's this book, where's my book at? This book, Edge. So if you read this book, Edge, and you can see I read it a lot, by Ben Littleton, great author. He's got another book that I really like too. So there's a whole chapter in there on team cohesion, and there was a study done by an ex-rugby player. I can't remember if he was in New Zealand rugby or an Australian rugby. So I know that that's a no-no to confuse the two, so I apologize now. But he did a study across 9 sports over 30 years and found a very strong correlation between turnover rate, so coaching manager turnover rate, and individual player development. So higher turnover rate, lower individual development. So players that we purchased in previous years fail to meet expectations. I think a lot of that has to do with, if you zoom out the lens a little bit, look at what United's been doing for the last decade, how many managers we've seen come and go, how many players we've seen come and go. It's incredibly difficult for players to actually develop. And you see the same thing at Chelsea. Chelsea have had how many managers? How many players that have been at that side at Chelsea for a long time have actually developed, you've seen actually like improve? I would argue that Dalot has improved. Obviously, Garnacho has done really well under Ten Hag. I think that Manu, obviously, he's already had the talent, but we've seen what he's done when he's been trusted. I would definitely argue that Dalot's improved for sure. We've just bought a lot of young players, so it's hard. We've had a lot of injuries, so it's difficult to see if anyone has definitely improved. Onana started shaky, but he got a lot better as the season went on. Yeah, Danny, that's why you're not going to see him at Copa, because he's banned. Zambrano. Expectations is based on the amount the club was willing to pay. Well, and that's one thing. So I don't hold a player or a manager responsible for how much you pay for a player. That's up to the people in charge of the negotiations. So that was up to someone like Woodward, Murtaugh, Richard Arnold. Going forward, it's going to be up to someone like Ashworth, Barada, those guys. That's on them. The manager, it's not FIFA. The manager is not sitting down and negotiating wages and the transfer fee. Now, what I do hold a player responsible for to a certain extent is the wages, because you and your agent are sitting down demanding those wages, and United are stupid enough to pay for them. Anthony and his wages, or his agent, negotiated that $200K a week, and which is literally a 10-time increase from what he was on at Ajax. So that is what I'll hold a player responsible for and accountable for. I'll hold Sandro to a higher standard. I'll hold Rashford to a higher standard for getting that new contract and getting those big wages. So yeah, I have expectations that are based on the transfer fee. I can't really fault anyone for. I was like, Maguire, that's a stick a lot of people hit Maguire with. It's not Maguire's fault. Maguire didn't sit down and say, I'm an 85 million pound defender. No one, that was United they're being stupid. Like, that's just ridiculous. And so don't let the media, don't let rival fans kind of trick you and goad you into holding a player's transfer fee to, accountable for that, or even a manager, because it has nothing to do with the player, nothing to do with the manager. It is what it is. Justin says, we'll love the steal Teo Hernandez from AC Milan. Madrid messed up letting him leave. As for having an additional striker besides Haaland and Xerxes, have a backup for injuries and give Haaland time. I mean, I would have thought, because there were links a few months back, that we were going to be looking for someone a little older in terms of striker goes. I think that the stars just didn't align. Had like Haaland come in with when Cavani or maybe even Ronaldo was here, I think he could have learned a little bit. So even when we got the kind of the announcement from Romano and Ornstein that Xerxes was pretty much wrapped up, we saw photos from him getting his medical, wearing the training top. I'm a little concerned because Xerxes is still younger. He's 23. Is he going to need more development? Can we afford to try to develop 2 strikers? I mean, Haaland was not meant to be our number one striker. He wasn't the number one striker at Atalanta. He wasn't meant to be. It kind of fell into him when Zapata got some injuries in his form dip. He kind of had to take over. Remember, we tried to get Harry Kane and Rasmus Højlund. Obviously, that's a pipe dream because that would have been almost 200 million. But the plan was not that. Plus, Højlund was injured, and he was literally our only striker besides Martial. I don't count Martial because he's always injured. And so Xerxes, I like. He's a little bit different profile to Højlund. He's a little bit more of that Benzema. What we've seen from Harry Kane recently, kind of dropping deep, getting more involved in the build-up. Xerxes, he's a big guy, but he does remind me of a lot of like prime Ibra, prime Benzema, very good with the ball at his feet as well. And so I do think he could offer a bit of a different profile. Could they play together, he and Højlund? I don't know. 3 strikers is getting difficult just because of the player power these days. It's not like the 90s where, we had 4 strikers. We had Cole, we had Ollie, we had Sheringham. And it's just not, we just don't see it that way. Players want to play, and you can't afford to pay these guys in what we're paying them now and not play them either. And so City have 2 strikers. Arsenal have technically say 2. I still don't think Havertz is a striker, but Gabriel Jesus is not good. It's hard to have multiple. It would be great, right? It's about our finite funds, prioritizing, and then seeing what we have at the end of the transfer window to work with moving forward, and then already planning for maybe January. So Theo Hernandez is a good left back, though. I think if we didn't have Malacia and we just, and all we had was Shaw, it's a question of, do you sell Shaw? Who would buy Shaw? He's injured, and who could we get? I did that video last month or so on left back targets that we've been linked with. Left backs that I would like us to look at. You guys can go take a look at that. Let me know what you think. Obviously, we've been linked a little bit with Gutierrez. Nori, I think, was another name that was thrown out there. Who's that other one we were linked with? It just came up recently. Let me know in the comments if you remember what we were talking about the other day with the left back position. I know Laco was a name we've been linked with as well. Brandon asked, do you hold the manager accountable for player performance or just the player? It depends. There's not a blanket way to answer that question because there are a lot of factors at play. People get frustrated with me in life when I say it depends. That's why I can't take the Myers-Briggs because it's just all these either or questions. And I'm like, it depends. What is your favorite color? I'm like, it depends. You talking about wall color? You talking about shirts? You talking about cars? I don't have an answer. It depends. It's very easy to tell just from watching a player and maybe looking at their numbers if they have the skill, right? I think that when you and again, you got to look at the players around you as well, in the system as well, and everything's going on, injuries and things too. I think that Ten Hag made some players look worse than they were last year. So I'll use Harry Maguire as an example. I think Harry Maguire is not a bad defender. I don't think he suits Ten Hag's system. I think Ten Hag made him look worse by trying to play out from the back with Harry Maguire. In that case, we know Maguire's limitations. We know what he can't do. And he was put in a situation where he was asked to do all the things that really he can't do very well. So in that case, I would blame Ten Hag. And I have blamed Ten Hag in that regard. I've criticized him a lot for that. Some other players, like Antony, for instance, no right foot, cannot, there's no reason for him to go to ground as much as he does when he's making a tackle because he completely puts himself out of the game every single. I don't know if that's a Brazilian thing or what. And I just don't think Antony just has it. His passing has not been great. His shooting, it started off brightly when we first signed him, but it's just tapered off. And he's just rarely on target with his shots. It's either wide off to the left side of the goal or it's right at the keeper. And I just don't think he's got that factor. Maybe it was a bit too early to bring him in. He's still young. Maybe it was kind of like when we brought in Memphis. Remember, Memphis came off a good season at PSV. Maybe he was just too young to do it because maybe it was reverse. Maybe Memphis should have went to Lyon first and then came to United. Who knows? So I wish, Brendan, that I had an answer. It's just going to depend. I think it's going to be a player-by-player basis. Because, again, you could say, a player like Memphis under one coach, a player like Memphis under, Ollie probably would have looked crazy, crazy good. But under someone like Jose, he's not going to look as good, is he? Because Jose asks a lot of different of his players. He wants everybody to defend, play counterattack, and it's just you're not going to get the most out of some players. So a lot of factors to consider in a question like that. again, player by player basis, and you got to look at all the factors. Again, what do I say all the time? Context is key. You got to add context. It's not easy just to say, do you think this player is good enough or not? There's a lot of context there. But these are good questions. York, yeah, Brandon, that's the other one I forgot. York. I knew there was another one. I was just watching the 99 documentary again the other day. Brendan says it does depend. There are a crazy amount of factors involved, and that's why I don't envy managers. I don't envy scouts. I don't envy the coaches. I don't envy sporting directors. It's a big job, and it's so easy to get it wrong. It's like baking or doing a really long math equation. It's like any little mistake along the way, and the whole end product is ruined. It's why I hate baking. Maybe it's why I hate math. I don't know. Most math I like to do is how many cupcakes can I eat before I start feeling sick. I do have a soft spot for baked goods. So it is, I don't like candy, I don't like pop, but baked goods I'm all about. So, but really good question today. Glad to see everybody getting involved in the live chat. Again, we need to sell players, I think, before we start taking some of these links more seriously. When we know that we've got limited amount of funds, we're trying to haggle over Branthwaite. We're looking at number 10, which is a little interesting to me that we're looking at number 10 because it wouldn't have been a position that I would have prioritized with Mason Mount, Bruno, and then again, like I said, Ahmad. Does that mean that the Bruno stuff with the Saudi League is a little bit more advanced? I don't know, but we'll see what happens. It's very early on in the transfer window. We're already seeing a lot of stuff happen. We're already doing a lot more than we've ever done. If we're not careful, INEOS could turn us into a proper football club again when it comes to recruitment. I mean, we're not going to get to complain about anything. Who are we going to point the finger at anymore? We're going to have to ultimately just start pointing it at the players and the manager, right? And not just blaming the Glazers like Gary Neville likes to do all the time. I do think we need to raise some funds by selling some players. Like someone mentioned earlier, we have a lot of wingers. And some of those I just don't think are going to stay. I could go back and forth right now if Ahmad's going to stick around, especially if we're linked with some of these other players. I think Palestri is done. Remember, his agent came out not that long ago and said that, he needs to leave. Remember, Ten Hag didn't sign Palestri. Ollie did. Ollie signed him. He didn't even play him. He sent him on a loan. He sent a couple loans with Alaves. And I like Palestri in that he wants to get up high up to the byline and put the ball in the box. I haven't seen enough of him. I've seen much more of Ahmad than I have Palestri. So if I had to choose one, I would keep Ahmad and sell Palestri. Brendan says, I think selling Bruno is certain. In my opinion, he was our biggest problem. Might as well get a huge fee for him while we can. Why do you think he was our biggest problem? I agree in the sense that if someone's willing to overpay for a player, especially a 29, 30-year-old, you should probably not just dismiss it out of hand, right? Fergie used to do the same thing. If someone's willing to pay more than a player's worth, you have to consider it. The question I asked in that video on would I sell Bruno for 100 million is, would any replacement be worth it? Would you get an adequate replacement in Bruno? I think in Simmons, you'd get an adequate replacement, but I don't think Simmons offers. I wish you could combine Olmo's passing range and Simmons, like his energy and everything and the way he gets involved. I wish you could combine them both because I think that would be what Bruno is, but we're not going to get that. I think if I was going to sell Bruno for 100 million, I would then turn around and then replace him by spending 100 million on Florian Wirtz or like a Musiala or something, someone who's a little bit more that level. I think Florian Wirtz is incredible. And there are a lot of number 10s out there that are a little lesser known. Szymanski I really like, Baumgartner I really like, Sudikov. Knowing if this were like Woodward and Co. still and not INEOS, I would be worried that we would sell Bruno and go get like Brahim Diaz or something and throw him in there, get another Madrid cast off basically. But that's not who we are anymore. So, but yeah, Brendan, let me know why you think Bruno was the biggest problem. I mean, his numbers don't lie. He's been immense numbers wise, not only for United, but in the league. He does a lot of things that other players just cannot do. And yeah, let me know why. Danny B, we should be able to get 25-30 for Palestri. That is a lot of money for a player who's not really kicked the ball for us and who hasn't really excelled. He's looked decent for Uruguay. I think he had a couple of decent performances last season on loan. I don't remember. Does anyone remember what we paid for Palestri? I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't think we're going to get 25-30 million. Although with some of the crazy transfers that are not so legitimate that are going on right now between some of the clubs in the league, you never know. If I were United, I might be jumping on that in the same train of thought, Danny, and saying like, listen, you just sold this no-name Wi-Fi password guy for 40 million to Villa between Everton. Like, we're gonna get something for Pellistri. I don't know if the league is cut out or Pellistri is cut out for this league though. We'll see. He could do really well in La Liga. Maybe he could help us with another player that we might be looking at. Who knows? Pellestri's end product not good enough. He's young. I mean, he's not as young as people think he is, but he's still young. But the problem is, it's just, again, it's that inconsistent, like where he's played. We've had a lot of managers, and he's not getting minutes. I think whether or not the quality end product is there, I like his mindset of, all right, I'm a wide player, I'm an attacker, I'm going to try to get forward and find somebody in the box. I'm going to put the ball back in the box. None of our other wingers do that. He's the only winger we have who does that. Everyone else wants to cut in and shoot. And it's just, that's why Højlund barely gets any touches. That's why Højlund was like the lowest in the league when it came to strikers receiving the ball or touches. It's like why one match, the most passes that Højlund received in one match was from Andre Onana, because nobody was passing it to him. And it frustrated the hell out of me. I think Simons is going to want regular minutes. Again, if Bruno stays, we still have Mason Mount, and we still have all these wingers. I don't know if that's something we're going to be able to offer. He wouldn't get that at Bayern, I don't think. They just brought in Olise. They've got other players in that midfield position as well. Would he get that at Leipzig? I think that would depend on Olmo. So maybe that could be a domino effect there. I don't know. PSG want to keep him. Is he part of Luis Enrique's plans? He hasn't been part of his plans for the last season. And so I think like the same with Ugarte. Ugarte is not part of Luis Enrique's plans. I mean, I think PSG are trying to sign. Who are they trying to? I feel like they're trying to sign somebody else. I can't remember who they were trying to sign. So PSG might need some money, but who knows? I half expect PSG just to buy more midfielders, because that's who PSG seem to always want to buy, is midfielders. But who knows? Again, Simons sounds like it would be a loan and with an obligation or an option. So again, not the worst thing in the world. It depends on the fee. We did that kind of a similar thing with Amrabat. I don't know for sure if that's off the table or not yet. But that's just my opinion between the two. If I had to choose right now, I'd probably lean more towards Simons. I think the fact that he's 5 years younger and he's already got great numbers is, I think, the clincher for me. Not saying Olmo is a bad player. I just like him. I like Simons a little more. It's like if I went to a restaurant and I got steak and didn't get a hamburger, it didn't mean I hate hamburgers. It just means I wanted steak. So, it is what it is. But again, you guys let me know your thoughts, Simons versus Olmo. This turned into a super long video. I've noticed that when more people starting getting involved in the live chat, that these videos are getting a little longer. And that's not a bad thing at all. That's not me complaining. That's not even really a flex. It's more of a like, wow, like I'm glad that everybody's getting involved, sharing their thoughts, letting me know what they think. I love it when people disagree, because I don't like to live in an echo chamber, which is why I'm not really active on social media. But it's good. Any more thoughts on this live chat before I wrap this up? I'd love to know your opinion. Let me know right now in the chat. Who would you pick between Dani Olmo, Xavi Simons, or maybe you'd say neither. I want to keep Bruno. We know that Brendan does not want Bruno. Who are you looking at, Brendan? Who are you looking at, Danny? Let me know your thoughts. Justin, if you're still there, who would you pick between the two? And let me know. I'll leave the live chat open a little bit longer. Let me just check and see if anything's come up. I doubt it, since it's going to be, 10 p.m. in the UK right now. So I doubt we're going to see a whole lot of movement anymore today. Yeah, I got nothing. Got to sift through all this garbage that's popping up on Twitter these days. You guys notice that? Try to look at hashtags and it's just a bunch of porn now. Twitter, man. Elon Musk, get it together, will you? Come on. Stop making crappy trucks and fix the thing you bought a couple of years ago. Danny says, I prefer to go to Due if no money for that Simons on loan. Yeah, Due is interesting. I know that he was linked with Bayern earlier. I've spoken a little bit about him recently as well. I think that for me, Due was definitely a good option, and then Sancho and Ten Hag work things out. So we could be flush with wingers, and that's not a bad problem for a manager to have. It just means, some people aren't going to play as much, and it does probably mean we're not going to be bringing in a winger. I think that when Elise decided to go to Bayern, I think it was, I think their writing was a little bit on the wall in some regards. But we'll see. And again, I got to quote David Ornstein. I'm giving up trying to guess. Who knows? It's anyone's guess. So I think it's going to wrap it up, though. Good to see everybody getting involved. Good to see some opinions going. It sounds like you guys have some strong views on our number 10s, whether that's Bruno or these two options that we talked about today. But it's interesting to see how the two stack up. Similar positions, obviously. Similar career paths, in Barcelona and Leipzig. Versatility, obviously. The skill and talent is there, what we've seen. It's just, when you get down to the profile player, they're very different. Again, Olmo's, going to pick that pass, and Simons is going to carry that ball a little bit and get involved a little bit more in close quarters, link up one touch. And so it just depends. It could be a personal preference. I think ultimately at the end of the day, it does come down to Ten Hag and our recruitment staff and what they decide who might be better. Price is probably going to play a big role in that. And then I think what happens with Bruno is going to play a big role as well. So we'll see. I like the way we're moving. I like who we're being linked with. I like that we're working on multiple deals. It's a nice change of pace. So anyone's guess, probably not going to see a whole lot going on the weekend. Usually this stuff happens during the week. So until the next one, barring any major announcements, over the weekend, I will see you guys on the next one. I appreciate everybody stopping by. Don't forget to hit the like button on your way out the door. Don't forget to subscribe if you are new to the channel. Tell all your friends, tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your kids, tell your wife, go check out the channel if they want to learn a little bit more about some of these coaches, some of these players, and just basically listen to me chat about United throughout the week. So appreciate you guys for stopping by. Appreciate you guys, Brendan, Danny, Justin, everybody. Thank you guys. Vibes, good to see you again. And I will see you guys in the next one. Enjoy your weekend. Take it easy.